I'm going to turn to Gideon Levy to ask a little bit more about the topic of this session, which is the ongoing silencing of Palestinian narratives. And of course, Gideon, you're writing from where do you actually live? Do you live in Tel Aviv? So in the heart of Israel. Do you feel that the narratives around the Palestinian situation, the Palestinian context, the Palestinian perspectives are gaining greater or lesser prevalence in the mainstream within Israel, would you say?
I will get to your question, but the title of our session today is Marginalizing the Palestinian voice or the Palestinian narrative. And I can say here, and I want to focus on the Israeli media, I can say here that I wish it would be only about marginalizing the Palestinian voice or the Palestinian presence. I wish this would be the problem. We could face it. The problem in Israeli media is much deeper, and I think the Israeli media is a crucial actor in order to understand how come that the Israeli society is living in such a denial, thinking that if we will not talk about the elephant in the room, the elephant will just disappear. And the Israeli media, by and large, is the biggest collaborator with the Israeli occupation. I would even say that if the Israeli media would have fulfilled its professional job, nothing to do with politics, if it would just have been fulfilling its social democratic job, by informing the truth, by informing at all about the occupation, I might think that the occupation would have come to its end long time ago, because I truly believe that would more Israelis know, and they know nothing about the occupation, I truly believe, and maybe I'm naive, I truly believe that if more Israelis would have known the truth, they wouldn't let it go. Some of them, at least, are people of conscience who just are protected by the media and can live in this bubble of denial and lies. The problem is not marginalizing. In the Israeli media, the problem is dehumanizing the Palestinians and demonizing them. And this is much worse than just marginalizing. The Palestinian image in Israeli media is either absent or a demon, a terrorist, or something which don't deserve any human feelings. I always give this outrageous example, which is extreme, but it is very, very typical. In one of the former operations in Gaza, there were 2 Israeli dogs killed. One dog was killed with the troops entering to Gaza, and the other dog was killed from a Qassam rocket in a villa in Sderot, next to the border. Both dogs got front page coverage in Israeli media. The funeral, tears, people speak about them, the soldiers at the grave with photos. I'm a dog lover, I'm an animal lover, and I totally understand this sentiment, don't get me wrong. But in the very same day, there were tens of Palestinians killed, in the very same day. Now, it's not that the Israeli media didn't write about, it was in Cast-led, by the way. It's not like the Israeli media didn't cover the losses or didn't cover the fact that tens of Palestinians were killed. But the question in journalism is always about how you deliver the information. If the dog gets a front page coverage and tens of Palestinians get a small piece in page 19 or 12 without names, without images, with nothing human about them, so you understand that the message is very, very clear. The message is that we care more about our dogs. This was as rough as I say it now, but that's the message. Now, this message is an ongoing message. There is nothing cheaper in Israel than lives of Palestinians. And the Israeli media is the biggest agent to deliver this message again and again on a daily basis. Forget about opinion pieces. We have very advanced and radical opinion pieces in favor of the Palestinians, against the Palestinians. It's wonderful. But what really shapes the way of perceiving the reality are the news, the flow of information. And the flow of information that the average Israeli gets is totally biased. Most of the Israelis really know nothing. Most of them have never been to the occupied territories. Most of them don't want to know anything. Now, behind this, there's no ideology. Don't get wrong. The last thing that direct the Israeli media is ideology. It's above all commercial. It's a kind of self-censorship which is much more dangerous than governmental censorship, because governmental censorship creates some kind of resistance. Self-censorship is voluntarily. Everyone is very happy with the coverage of the occupation in Israel. The readers, the writers, the publishers, the editors, the government, the secret services, the army, everyone is very happy about it. And you can't break it. You can't break through. It starts with the language. Read the Israeli newspaper or listen to the Israeli TV. The language is the military occupying forces language. There is no arrest without trial. There is administrative arrest or administrative detention. This is softer. You'll never hear about a soldier who shot dead a child. A child was shot. Not a soldier shot him, a child was shot. It is softer. It's easier to perceive. And it's always a terrorist, obviously. I remember in the Second Intifada, you know that those organizations never have victims who are not senior. Everyone is a senior in the Hamas, senior in the Islamic Jihad. They are always senior, until I found once that the senior guy who was assassinated was 7 years old. A true story in Hebron. What a career. At the age of 7, he was already a senior terrorist in the Hamas. That's the way he was presented in the media. They didn't know he was 7, yeah, in this case. But labeling everyone as a terrorist, you know, makes things much easier for us to digest. So if he's a terrorist, maybe he really deserves to be killed. Yesterday I wrote, and today also, about a child who was shot by the fence on his way to Al-Aqsa. He wanted to pray there, and he was shot dead from the ambush by the border police, by the Israeli border police. Happens on a daily basis. But I was asking myself, what will make Israelis to feel anything about this child? Because immediately the official version was danger to the security of Israel, a terrorist, he was on his way, God knows, his father is Hamas. I mean, immediately you see also in the talkbacks how the Israelis immediately protect themselves. Why did his father let him go to the fence? I mean, it's his father's fault, not ours. Not those murderers, and I call them murderers, who shot him dead. It's his father's fault. So it's a whole machinery of brainwash. There is no other way but to call it brainwash, which presents any Palestinian as a terrorist, which presents no Palestinian as an equal human being. You know, you speak about sorrow, about pain, about losing sons. The Israeli Jews are so sensitive about their own children. We have now an ongoing scandal in Israeli media about a nurse in a kindergarten who had hit 2 children, and there were cameras, and Israel is in turmoil from this nurse. She's in jail. She will spend years in jail, I'm sure. They burned her house already. The parents burned her house on Friday. And those very same Israelis cannot make the analogy and think about this 15-year-old child who is shot when he climbs a fence between two fences. He climbs on a fence and he's shot dead, and they cannot recruit any kind of emotions toward this guy, any kind of solidarity, any kind of pity, sympathy, you name it, human feelings. And that's the product of Israeli a brainwash system through the Israeli media, who does it systematically over the years. It's not that one case or other case shows the picture. It's a daily picture in which, except of really Haaretz, which is just one candle in the darkness, but except of Haaretz, the Israeli doesn't get what he deserves to get. He deserves to get the truth, and he doesn't get it. One word about the international media, and I'll conclude here. I think there is a shift in international media, and I wouldn't like to share the optimism that I heard here. I think that in the last years, to criticize Israel, to criticize the occupation, to express solidarity with the Palestinians, to describe the occupation, becomes harder and harder in the Western media, harder and harder. Not only in this country, not only in Europe, obviously also in the United States. I know it, country after country, how difficult it is to publish something critical or something which describes the life in a refugee camp or whatever. Because the Jewish lobby, together with the Christian lobby and others, became so aggressive. This formula in which any criticism about the occupation or about Israel means anti-Semitism had penetrated very deep and paralyzed many, many, many journalists. Who needs this headache to get then those phone calls and petitions and phone calls from the embassy and phone calls from the Jewish community? Let's not publish it, and that's it. And I know by person journalists who don't dare to write anymore because they know to what kind of pressure they will be exposed. And that's really your job. We cannot let it go. We should say no, as I said yesterday. We should say no to all those comparisons between anti-Semitism and being critical about the occupation. This should stop, and it's finally about your democracies. So to sum up, on one hand, we have the Israeli media brainwashing, the biggest collaborator with the Israeli occupation. There is no bigger collaborator with the Israeli occupation rather than the established Israeli media, doing it for years, covering all the crimes, covering up all the crimes, making it much easier to be an Israeli and an occupier and still feel good about ourselves. That's always the amazing thing when you ask Israelis, you see how good they feel about themselves. Try to tell them that the Israeli army, the IDF, is the second moral army in the world. They will attack you like hell. How can you dare? The second moral army? There is no moral army more than the Israeli army. They are really convinced that the Israeli army is the most moral army in the world. Many times I say maybe the army of Luxembourg is more moral, but then they correct me, there is no army in Luxembourg. But in any case, there is. Okay. So maybe you will convince the Israelis that the Luxembourg army is more moral. But this conviction that we are moral, that everything is justified, that whatever we do is right, whatever the Palestinians are doing is wrong, that each Palestinian is waking up in the morning and thinks only about one thing, how to kill a Jew today, that he was born to kill, that there is no connection between the occupation and the resistance, that there is no connection between being an occupier and being a democracy. All those values which are deep, deep rooted in Israeli society, together with the feeling that we are the chosen people, that we are the biggest victims in history and the only victims in history. Don't you dare to speak about another Holocaust, because we are the only one and nobody can compare us to anyone. All these values are being transmitted to every Israeli from childhood, mainly through the Israeli media.
Thank you so much. I'm keen to press you a little bit on the recent changes we've seen, which have led to some serious debate in this country over the definition of anti-Semitism, and specifically the idea now that part of the definition of anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism, denying Israel's right to self-determination. And I know that there will be many journalists, as you've touched on, who feel that, you know, that poses serious questions over how to report fairly on the conflict. I'm just wondering if you can give us a sense of what your own concerns are with the shift in the definition, and what some of the implications you've already started to notice have been of that.
First of all, there are changes within Israel, including legislations, which might continue now, depends on the elections, but we can find ourselves in a situation in which criticizing the army will become illegal, supporting BDS is almost illegal, still legal, but almost illegal. But I'm not concerned about the legal arena, because I'm going for 32 years every week to the occupied territories, and I'm violating the Israeli law, which does not allow Israelis to enter Area A. And I do it week after week, 32 years, so my place in jail is guaranteed, and I couldn't care less. But what is really happening, mainly outside, but it has also a reflection on Israel, is that this machinery of the Jewish lobby, Israeli embassy, Christian lobby, and others succeeded very efficiently to create this analogy between any kind of criticism about Israel and anti-Semitism. And I think that it's really about the Western democracies. It's even not about Palestinians and Israelis. This, I spoke about yesterday, so I don't want to repeat myself, but the fact that any kind of struggle for justice is being criminalized in many countries is unheard of. And it cannot remain like this. Let them call you anti-Semites. Ignore it, because you know the truth. Because most of the people who criticize Israel or the occupation are people of conscience. And people of conscience are not anti-Semites. They are people of conscience, people of justice, and they fight for the most just cause maybe today on earth. Nobody accused those who fought against apartheid. Nobody accuses those who fight for animal rights or against the sweatshops in South America, in South Asia. Nobody accuses even those who want to boycott Iran. They are not criminalized. The only case in which raising a voice for justice become almost criminal is about Israel and Palestine. This is a product of a very efficient machinery of blackmailing based on the past, on the history, and based on other factors. And we as journalists and you as activists or people who have interest shouldn't let it go. By all means not. I know so many journalists who are now paralyzed already, who are really scared to raise their voice. No, we should say no, because it is a trap, because it is a manipulation, because raising the voice against the occupation is not just a right, it is a duty of anybody who has conscience.
Before we move on to Rawam, who's been waiting very patiently, thank you. I was just curious to push you on one final question, which was to do with the point you made about the perspective expressed in the Israeli media you were referring to, but I think perhaps you were hinting that that might be wider than just the Israeli media, being not so much ideological as commercial. Could you maybe clarify what you mean by that point?
Look, the Israeli media is today quite a free media. There is some military censorship, but it's really limited to very, very few topics, and to put everything on it is ridiculous. The Israeli media is free. And the real tyrant of Israeli media are mainly the readers and the viewers who don't want to know. Now the question is, are we journalists there only to please our viewers? Are we there only to amuse them? Are we there only to tell them what they want to hear? Or we have some kind of duty, even if most of the media in Israel, almost all the media is private owned. It's a private business today, I know, but still we have some role in a democracy. We are not just another industry. The problem is that most of the journalists, publishers, editors, they see it as another way of making money or another branch of an industry or commerce, that we should really do everything that our clients will be happy. This is not free journalism. And I think that the ideology behind it, I mean, I know most of the journalists in Israel, and I can tell you there is a majority of them who are anti-occupation, who are leftists, who are liberals. What does it matter? What matters is what they write and what they speak. This is what matters. What they think deep in their heart, I couldn't care less about what they think. And because the atmosphere today is, look, I'll give you one example and I conclude with this. 4 years ago, I wrote an article which created a huge scandal in Israel about the Israeli pilots, calling them whatever. It was when they were bombing Gaza day after day. Pilots are the elite group. They are adored in Israel, as you know. And the readership of Haaretz, who is kind of elite, at least in his own eyes, the pilots are their sons and grandsons and brothers and friends. And it created a huge scandal. The days were days of operation in Gaza. The commercial department of Haaretz made the appreciation that they lost between 3 to 4 million shekels on this article in terms of cancellation of readers, cancellations of subscribers, and advertisements, which is almost £1 million. And I faced this unbelievable publisher who just told me, go ahead, ignore it. Just go ahead, we support you. But how many publishers like this do you have in the world? So when this is the situation and the media is struggling on its existence in this country and in Israel, printed and even broadcast are all struggling on their existence. So it takes so much courage and devotion to say, yeah, we will tell the truth even if it costs us whatever it costs us. This becomes really an impossible duty, because by the end of the day, nobody also wants all those media to get closed. I mean, nobody wants all those other media to get bankrupt. But it takes at least some kind of courage, which most of the publishers and writers don't have, to continue and to try to to deliver the message to the readers that we are not here only to amuse you. We have a role to fulfill.
Thanks. And